Boi. Come. Bashalan. In the peace. Atele. Putting crown on. Byler. Her husband. Boi Kailar. Come bride. This is a beautiful Hebrew wedding song, as if the angels in heaven are calling for the bride who has been waiting for 6,000 years to stand up bravely and put on the crown of glory for the coming King of Heaven.
大家好，欢迎来到以诺谈天节目。今天我们讲亚伯拉罕的故事第7部分。末世独家，情况也，两家分开，成必须。跟从眼目，险遭祸。319救罗德。前面我们说了，上帝在创造天地之先就呼唤亚伯兰2次，伯兰，伯兰。伯兰出生见天象，宁录王要杀他，结果仆人的儿子代替了亚伯兰，神救了他。亚伯兰苦学上帝，宁录建塔办天庭。亚伯兰批神像，宁录把亚伯兰与哥哥哈兰投入火炉，最终亚伯兰3日3夜毫发未损，哈兰死在火炉中。宁录再次要杀亚伯兰，最终他们全家逃离，神第一次呼召亚伯兰进迦南地。神第二次呼召亚伯兰进迦南地，遇见荒年，撒来险遭不测。
Hello everyone, welcome to EnochTH Show. Today we begin the story of Abraham, Part 7. In the Doomsday, every family must be alone in the wilderness, even two families must be separated. Following what eyes could see, Lot led family to the disaster, 319 from Abram's family to save Lot. In the previous sections we talked before the creation of the heaven and the earth. God called Abram twice, Burim and Burim. Abram was born, and King Nimrod wanted to kill him, but his servant's son took Abram's place. God saved him. Abram searched so hard for the way of back to heaven. Nimrod built a tower to rebel against heaven. In anger, Abram burned idols of false gods and smashed the idols of Nimrod. Abram was thrown in the furnace for 3 days and 3 nights. But he walked out without damage even a single hair. Nimrod had a nightmare and wanted to kill Abram. And Abram entered the land of Canaan in his early 50s. God called Abram for the second time into the land of Canaan. In the famine years, beauty of Sarai almost landed her a disaster.
上回书我们留一系列问题让大家去思考，现在我们浅浅地聊一下我们的看见，仅供参考。为什么亚伯兰说撒来是妹妹也没错？她是亚伯兰哥哥哈兰的女儿，今天我们叫侄女。挪亚洪水之前，人可以活几十代，所以比自己长的都叫父亲辈，比自己年轻的都叫儿子辈，而与自己相当的叫弟兄姐妹。哈兰比亚伯兰大38岁，所以亚伯兰看哥哥哈兰也是父辈，这样侄女就是妹妹。为什么上帝不喜悦亚伯兰这样做？当人娶妻之后，妻子就是妻子，不管过去是啥辈分，现在是妻子，丈夫成为妻子的盖头。挪亚娶了以诺的女儿，比挪亚大近100岁的女人，最终就是以诺的女婿，不再是重孙。所以再说是妹子，是100%的撒谎。最终埃及王给亚伯兰那么多礼物，是不是亚伯兰因祸得福？凡是没从上帝来的礼物，再多都是祸，越多祸越大，特别是夹杂着不可告人的目的，比如说下甲。听起来是使女，却是要顶替撒来的那女人。那使女就是夏甲， 希伯来语这名字是啥意思？那外邦人指的是最终给亚伯兰麻烦多多的外邦人。撒来不生育是因为还有一条诫命没有完成，所以上帝不能赐他们夫妇孩子，是那条诫命。亚伯兰还没明白，后面雅各对拉结说，是神不给他孩子，不是我，这说明雅各在那时刻就明白了。我们直到犹大二儿子才明白，当然诫命重有，只是上帝并不强迫人去做。如果有人愿意成为破鞋之家，当着全城的面，那也可以。这点要等到路的记才会显明。那诫命就是亚伯兰要为亚当家留后，因为弟弟亚当死了。亚伯兰后来再娶妾，基土拉生6子，还是要给亚当家留后。雅各自己生6子，从正妻利亚生的，再给亚当家留后6子。这也是为什么亚伯拉罕要为亚当家留6子的原因，最终5子成功，1子失落。这时候亚伯兰与罗德两家在一起，最终分开，从上帝的要求亚伯兰做的，你知道为什么吗？离开父家就是要完完全全的离开，罗德是父家的，如果两家在一起，是不可能通过苛刻的撒旦的。上帝也要亚伯拉罕这样做，因为末日亚当家真的是一家单独在旷野，最终被上帝扛进方舟的。亚伯拉罕也是他们的父，他们的表率。去好好想想，耶稣为什么不用98只加2只失落的羊，3只失落的？单单说一只，是无意中说的一只，还是有意说一只？亚伯兰是如何与上帝沟通的？是上帝腾云驾雾的来告诉他的，还是对他心说的？上帝对亚伯兰说话，与对耶稣说话，与对我们每一个人说话，都是一样的，就是对人的心说话。我们常常用不可能的，就把上帝拒之门外，久而久之，灵里就迟钝了。当我们不断的相信，而且立刻去做，就越来越灵敏。末日我们最终是有一善的信心。
In the last book, we left a series of questions for everyone to think about. Now let's talk a little about what we see, just for reference. 1. Why is it true that Abram said Sarai was his sister? She was the daughter of Abram's brother Haran, who today we call a niece. Before Noah's flood, people could live for dozens of generations, so those who were older than someone were called fathers, those younger than him were called sons, and those who were equal to him were called brothers and sisters. Haran was 38 years older than Abram, so Abram saw that his brother Haran was also his father, so his niece was his sister. 2. Why was God displeased with Abram? When a person marries a woman becoming his wife, the wife is the wife. No matter what generation she was in the past, but now she is his wife, and the husband becomes the cover of the wife. Noah married Enoch's daughter, a woman who was nearly 100 years older than Noah, and eventually became Enoch's son-in-law, no longer a great-grandson. So, it was a 100% lie to say that she was my sister. 3. In the end, the king of Egypt gave Abram so many gifts. Was it a blessing in disguise for Abram? All gifts that do not come from God, no matter how much and how good, will be a disaster, and the more gifts the greater the disaster, especially if it is mixed with ulterior motives, such as Hagar. It sounded like a maid, but it was the woman who was going to replace Sarai. 4. The maid is Hagar. What does the name in Hebrew mean? The word Hagar refers to the Gentiles who ended up causing a lot of trouble for Abram. 5. Sarai was barren because there was a commandment that had not been fulfilled, so God could not give them a couple and children. Is that commandment? Abram didn't understand, but Jacob said to Rachel later, God didn't give her the child, not me. This shows that Jacob understood at that moment. We didn't understand until the second son of Judah. Of course there are commandments, but God doesn't force people to do them, and if someone wants to be a house of broken shoes, in front of the whole city, that's fine. This would not be revealed until the book of Ruth. That commandment was that Abram must leave sons for Adam first by sleeping with woman of Adam's house, because his brother Adam died. Abram later remarried a concubine, and Keturah had 6 sons, but he still wanted to keep the sons of Adam's family. Jacob himself gave birth to 6 sons, from his first wife Leah, and left 6 sons for Adam's family. This is why Abraham wanted to leave 6 sons for Adam's family. In the end, 5 sons succeeded and 1 son was lost. 6. At this time, the family of Abram and Lot were together and finally separated, from what God asked Abram to do. Do you know why? To leave the father's house is to leave completely. Lot belongs to the father's house. If the 2 families are together, it is impossible to pass the harsh Satan. God also wanted Abraham to do the same, because at the last day Adam's family was really a family alone in the wilderness, and was finally carried into the ark by God. Abraham was also their father, their example. Come to think of it, why didn't Jesus use 98 plus 2 lost sheep and 3 lost sheep? Just say 1? Was it an accidental one, or an intentional one? 7. How did Abram communicate with God? Did God tell him from the sky out of the blue? Or to his heart? God speaks to Abram in the same way he speaks to Jesus and speaks to each of us, that is, to the heart of man. We often use impossible to shut God out, and over time, we become dull in spirit. When we keep believing and do it right away, we become more and more sensitive. At the end of the day, we will finally have the faith to move mountains.
下面我们来看这部分内容，先看经文描述。亚伯兰带着他的妻子与罗德，并一切所有的，都从埃及上南的去。亚伯兰的金、银、牲畜极多。他从南地渐渐往伯特利去，到了伯特利和爱的中间，就是从前支搭帐篷的地方，也是他起先筑坛的地方。他又在那里求告耶和华的名。与亚伯兰同行的罗德也有牛群、羊群、帐篷，那地容不下他们，因为他们的财物甚多，使他们不能同居。当时迦南人与比利洗人在那地居住，亚伯兰的牧人和罗德的牧人相争。亚伯兰就对罗德说：你我不可相争，你的牧人和我的牧人也不可相争，因为我们是骨肉，原文是弟兄。遍地不都在你眼前吗？请你离开我，你向左，我就向右；你向右，我就向左。罗德举目看见约旦河的全平原，直到索尔，都是滋润的。那地在耶和华为灭所多玛、俄摩拉以先如同耶和华的园子，也像埃及地。于是罗德选择约旦河的全平原往东迁移，他们就彼此分离了。亚伯兰住在迦南地，罗德住在平原的城邑，渐渐挪移帐篷，直到所多玛。所多玛人在耶和华面前罪大恶极。罗德离别亚伯兰以后，耶和华对亚伯兰说：从你所在的地方，你举目向东西南北观看，凡你所看见的一切地，我都要赐给你和你的后裔，直到永远。我也要使你的后裔如同地上的尘沙那样多， 人若能数算地上的尘沙，才能数算你的后裔。你起来，纵横走遍这地，因为我必把这地赐给你。亚伯兰就搬了帐篷，来到希伯伦万利的橡树那里居住，在那里为耶和华筑了一座坛。创世纪13章1至18节和合本。当安拉菲做示拿王，亚略做以拉撒王，基大老马做以兰王，提达做哥印王的时候，他们都攻打所多玛王比拉、俄摩拉王比沙、亚玛王示那、西扁王善以别和比拉王。比拉就是索尔。这5王都在西定谷会合，西定谷就是沿海。他们已经侍奉基大老马12年，到13年就背叛了。14年，基大老马和同盟的王都来在亚特律、加宁杀败了利法因人，在哈麦杀败了苏西人，在沙威、基列亭杀败了以米人，在何利人的希尔山杀败了何利人，一直杀到靠近旷野的伊勒、巴兰。他们回到安密巴，就是加迪斯，杀败了亚玛利全地的人，以及住在哈喜逊、他玛的亚摩利人。于是索多玛王、俄摩拉王、亚玛王、西扁王和比拉王，比拉就是索尔，都出来，在西定谷摆阵，与他们交战，就是与以兰王基大老马、哥印王提达、是拿王暗拉菲、以拉撒王亚略交战，乃是4王与5王交战。西定谷有许多石砌坑，索多玛王和俄摩拉王逃跑，有掉在坑里的，其余的人都往山上逃跑。4王就把索多玛和俄摩拉所有的财物，并一切的粮食都掳掠去了，又把亚伯兰的侄儿罗德和罗德的财物掳掠去了。当时罗德正住在索多玛。有一个逃出来的人告诉希伯来人亚伯兰，亚伯兰正住在亚摩利人曼利的橡树那里。曼利和以实哥宾亚乃都是弟兄，曾与亚伯兰联盟。亚伯兰听见他侄儿原文是弟兄被掳去，就率领他家里生养的精炼壮丁318人，直追到但，便在夜间自己同仆人分队杀败敌人，又追到大马士革左边的河坝，将被掳掠的一切财物夺回来，连他侄儿罗的和他的财物，以及妇女、人民也都夺回来。亚伯兰杀败基大老马和与他同盟的王回来的时候，索多玛王出来，在沙威谷迎接他，沙威谷就是王谷。又有撒冷王麦基喜德带着饼和酒出来迎接，他是至高神的祭司。他为亚伯兰祝福，说：愿天地的主，至高的神赐福与亚伯兰。至高的神把敌人交在你手里，是应当称颂的。亚伯兰就把所得的拿出1/10来给麦基喜德。索多玛王对亚伯兰说：你把人口给我，财物你自己拿去吧。亚伯兰对索多玛王说：我已经向天地的主至高的神耶和华起誓，凡是你的东西，就是一根线、一根鞋带，我都不拿，免得你说我使亚伯兰富足，只有仆人所吃的，并与我同行的亚乃以10葛曼利所应得的份，可以任凭他们拿去。创世纪14章1至24节和合本。
Now, let's look at this part. First look at the description of the scriptures. Then Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, to the south. Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Lot also, who went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. Now the land was not able to support them, that they might dwell together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanites and the Perizzites then dwelt in the land. So Abram said to Lot, "Please let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left, then I will go to the right, or, if you go to the right, then I will go to the left." And Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt as you go toward Zoar. Then Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east. And they separated from each other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. And the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, "Lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are northward, southward, eastward, and westward, for all the land which you see I give to you and your descendants forever. And I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants also could be numbered. Arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you." Then Abram moved his tent, and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to the Lord. Genesis 13 verses 1-18 NKJV. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel king of Shinar, Arioch king of Elasa, Kedorlaomer king of Elam, and Tidal king of nations, that they made war with Bera king of Sodom, Bersha king of Gomorrah, Shernab king of Admah, Shemeber king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is, Zor. All these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is, the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Kedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year Kedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and attacked the Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzim in Ham, the Emim in Shath Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their mountain of Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is, Kadesh, and attacked all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hazaz and Tamar. And the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is, Zor, went out and joined together in battle in the valley of Siddim against Kedorlaomer king of Elam, Tidal king of nations, Amraphel king of Shinar, and Arioch king of Elasa, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of asphalt pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains. Then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their provisions, and went their way. They also took Lot, Abram's brother's son who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, and they were allies with Abram. Now when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. So he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shave, that is, the king's valley, after his return from the defeat of Kedorlaomer and the kings who were with him. Then Melchizedek king of Salem brought out bread and wine, he was the priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tithe of all. Now the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the persons, and take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand to the Lord, God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will take nothing, from a thread to a sandal strap, and that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich, except only what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion. Genesis 14 verses 1 to 24 NKJV。
大家看，第13章，罗德一离开，上帝就再次显示对亚伯拉罕的祝福，这是第3次，也是最重要的一次。上帝永远是先祝福，再让人去跟从。我们要等到最后一部分，再细谈亚伯拉罕的祝福，因为那是最重要的部分。第14章，罗德一离开亚伯拉罕，就往眼睛看得见的富裕之地跑，结果就成了俘虏、牺牲品。好在亚伯拉罕带318人奋力杀敌，才救出罗德，顺便也救了索多玛的王。最终亚伯拉罕明明白白地说，为什么他要与索多玛王划清界限？这绝不是个人喜好，而是灵里的界限，更加越不得。也暗示罗德的祸根。这里面出现了撒冷王，撒冷就是平安的意思。耶路撒冷就是平安之城的意思，耶路指城。我们来读35亚伯兰的弟兄哈兰的儿子罗德有许多牲畜、牛羊和帐篷，因耶和华为着亚伯兰的缘故赐他们丰富。36当亚伯兰住在那地时，罗德的牧人与亚伯兰的牧人相争，那地容不下他们，因为他们的财物甚多，使他们不能同居。37亚伯兰的牧人放牧，不进那地之人的地。罗德的牧人所养的牲畜则不然，因他们被带到那地喂养。38那地的人见日日如此，便来找亚伯兰，为着罗德的牧人与他争吵。39亚伯兰对罗德说，你对我做的是什么事，使这地的居民以我为羞耻呢？你岂不知我在迦南人中是寄居的吗？你为何向我行这事呢？40亚伯兰每日因此与罗德相争，罗德并不听亚伯兰的话，他仍旧照原来的行，那地的居民就来告知亚伯兰。41亚伯兰对罗德说，你要成为这地居民的绊脚石到什么时候呢？我求你不要使我们彼此再争吵，因为我们是骨肉。42请你离开我，去选择一块你和你的牲畜可居住的地方，只是你和你的全家要远离我。43不要害怕离开我，若有人要伤你，你告诉我，我会为你报仇，只是要离开我。44亚伯兰对罗德说完这话，罗德就起身，举目看见约旦河的全平原。45他见全地都是滋润的，适合人及牲畜放牧。46罗德离开亚伯兰到了那地，支搭帐篷，住在索多玛，他们彼此分开了。47亚伯兰住在曼利平原，就是希伯伦，支搭他的帐篷，在那地住了许多年。亚沙尔书第16章，亚伯兰救罗德，下甲生以10马力。因那时，以兰王基大老马派人去见在他权下的是拿王宁禄、哥印王提达，以及与他立了约的以拉撒王亚略，说：来帮助我吧，我们一起去攻打所多玛城及其中的居民，因他们在这13年背叛了我。二四王便带着他们的军队，约有80万人，无论到哪里， 都将路上所见的人杀死。三所多玛和俄摩拉的武王，就是亚玛王示那、西扁王单以别、所多玛王比拉、俄摩拉王比沙和索尔王比拉出去，在西定谷与他们交战。这9王在西定谷交战，所多玛和俄摩拉王在以兰王面前被打败。西定谷有许多石砌坑，以兰王追赶所多玛诸王，所多玛王逃跑，掉在坑里，其余的人都往山上逃跑。以兰5王在后头追赶他们，直到所多玛城门，将所多玛的一切都掳掠了去。他们洗劫了所多玛和俄摩拉所有的城，并把亚伯兰的侄儿罗的和罗德的财物掳掠了去，就离开了。亚伯兰的仆人尤尼当时在战争中，将诸王在所多玛城所行的及罗德被掳都告诉了他。亚伯兰听见他侄儿被掳去，就率领他家里生养的精练壮丁318人，在夜间同仆人分队杀败敌人，独有4王逃走，各按各自的原路返回。把亚伯兰夺回所多玛一切财物，连他侄儿罗德和他的财物，他的妻子和孩子们，并他家里所有的人也都夺回来，罗德没有缺少的。就当他杀败诸王回来，他和他的壮丁经过与诸王交战的西定谷，使所多玛王比拉和余剩跟随他的人从他们掉下的石砌坑里出来，去见亚伯兰和他的人。有耶路撒冷王亚多尼喜德带着人并领与酒出去迎接亚伯兰和跟随他的人，他们同在米勒谷。亚多尼喜德祝福亚伯兰，亚伯兰将掳物的1/10献给他，亚多尼喜德是神面前的祭司。所多玛和俄摩拉王与他们的仆人去求亚伯兰释放他们的仆人，就是他所掳回来的财物，他可以拿去。亚伯兰回答所多玛王说：我指着造天地的主，就是那位救我脱离一切患难，今日从我仇敌手中拯救我，又将他们交在我手中的耶和华起誓，凡是你的东西，就是一根线、一根鞋带，我都不拿，免得你说我使亚伯兰富足。我所信靠的耶和华我的神对我说，你将不会缺乏，因我会祝福你手上一切所做的。看哪，这是你的一切财物，带上它离开吧。我指着永生的耶和华起誓，我不会从你这里带走一个活人，就是一根鞋带、一根线，我也不拿，只有仆人所吃的，并与我同行的亚乃、以10个曼利，他们的人及那些照看财物之人所应得的份，可以任凭他们拿去。所多玛王照着亚伯兰所说的给了他，他们仍催他拿他想要的，只是他没有。他送走了所多玛王及余剩的人，并为着罗德的缘故吩咐他们，他们便各回各的住处了。他弟兄的儿子罗德也被打发，带着他的财物离开，他便与他们同去。罗德回到他的住处所多玛，亚伯兰和他的人回到曼利平原，就是希伯伦。那时，耶和华在希伯伦再次向亚伯兰显现，对他说：不要惧怕，我要大大的赏赐你，因我必不离开你，我要使你的后裔极其繁多，赐福于你，使你的后裔多如天上的星，不可数算。我要将你眼所看到的这全地赐给你的后裔，作为他们永远的产业。你当刚强壮胆，不要惧怕。你当在我面前做完全人。亚伯兰78岁那年，法勒的儿子拉乌死了，拉乌活了239岁就死了。
You see, in chapter 13, as soon as Lot left, God showed his blessing to Abraham again, the third and most important one. God always blesses first, and then makes people follow. We'll wait until the last part to go into detail about the blessing of Abraham, because that's the most important part. In chapter 14, as soon as Lot left Abraham, he ran to a wealthy place that could be seen by his eyes, but he became a prisoner and a victim. Fortunately, Abraham and 318 people fought hard to kill the enemy, and then he rescued Lot. Abram also saved the king of Sodom. Abram said clearly why he wanted to draw a clear line with the king of Sodom. Also hints at Lot's bane. The king of Salem appears here, and Salem means peace. Jerusalem means the city of peace, and Jeru refers to a city. Let's read Book of Jasher, chapter 15. 35 And Lot the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks and herds and tents, for the Lord was bountiful to them on account of Abram. 36 And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for their property was too great for them to remain together in the land, and the land could not bear them on account of their cattle. 37 And when Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flock, they would not go into the fields of the people of the land, but the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. 38 And the people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. 39 And Abram said to Lot, What is this thou art doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that thou orderest thy herdsmen to feed thy cattle in the fields of other people? Dost thou not know that I am a stranger in this land amongst the children of Canaan, and why wilt thou do this unto me? 40 And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this, but Lot would not listen to Abram, and he continued to do the same, and the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram. 41 And Abram said unto Lot, How long wilt thou be to me for a stumbling block with the inhabitants of the land? Now I beseech thee, let there be no more quarreling between us, for we are kinsmen. 42 But I pray thee, separate from me, go and choose a place where thou mayest dwell with thy cattle and all belonging to thee, but keep thyself at a distance from me, thou and thy household. 43 And be not afraid in going from me, for if anyone do an injury to thee, let me know, and I will avenge thy cause from him, only remove from me. 44 And when Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, then Lot arose and lifted up his eyes toward the plain of Jordan. 45 And he saw that the whole of this place was well watered, and good for man as well as affording pasture for the cattle. 46 And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his tent, and he dwelt in Sodom, and they were separated from each other. 47 And Abram dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and he pitched his tent there, and Abram remained in that place many years. Book of Jasher, chapter 16. 1 At that time Kedorlaomer king of Elam sent to all the neighboring kings, to Nimrod, king of Shinar, who was then under his power, and to Tidal, king of Goyim, and to Arioch, king of Elasar, with whom he made a covenant, saying, Come up to me and assist me, that we may smite all the towns of Sodom and its inhabitants, for they have rebelled against me these 13 years. 2 And these 4 kings went up with all their camps, about 800,000 men, and they went as they were, and smote every man they found in their road. 3 And the 5 kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, Shernab king of Admah, Shemeber king of Zeboim, Bera king of Sodom, Bersha king of Gomorrah, and Bela king of Zor, went out to meet them, and they all joined together in the valley of Siddim. 4 And these 9 kings made war in the valley of Siddim, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah were smitten before the kings of Elam. 5 And the valley of Siddim was full of lime pits, and the kings of Elam pursued the kings of Sodom, and the kings of Sodom with their camps fled and fell into the lime pits, and all that remained went to the mountain for safety, and the 5 kings of Elam came after them and pursued them to the gates of Sodom, and they took all that there was in Sodom. 6 And they plundered all the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, and his property, and they seized all the goods of the cities of Sodom, and they went away, and Enoch, Abram's servant, who was in the battle, saw this, and told Abram all that the kings had done to the cities of Sodom, and that Lot was taken captive by them. 7 And Abram heard this, and he rose up with about 318 men that were with him, and he that night pursued these kings and smote them, and they all fell before Abram and his men, and there was none remaining but the 4 kings who fled, and they went each his own road. 8 And Abram recovered all the property of Sodom, and he also recovered Lot and his property, his wives and little ones and all belonging to him, so that Lot lacked nothing. 9 And when he returned from smiting these kings, he and his men passed the valley of Siddim where the kings had made war together. 10 And Barak king of Sodom, and the rest of his men that were with him, went out from the lime pits into which they had fallen, to meet Abram and his men. 11 And Adonizedek king of Jerusalem, the same was Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people, with bread and wine, and they remained together in the valley of Melech. 12 And Adonizedek blessed Abram, and Abram gave him 1/10 from all that he had brought from the spoil of his enemies, for Adonizedek was a priest before God. 13 And all the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah who were there, with their servants, approached Abram and begged of him to return them their servants whom he had made captive, and to take unto himself all the property. 14 And Abram answered the kings of Sodom, saying, As the Lord liveth, who created heaven and earth, and who redeemed my soul from all affliction, and who delivered me this day from my enemies, and gave them into my hand, I will not take anything belonging to you, that you may not boast tomorrow, saying, Abram became rich from our property that he saved. 15 For the Lord my God in whom I trust said unto me, Thou shalt lack nothing, for I will bless thee in all the works of thy hands. 16 And now therefore behold, here is all belonging to you, take it and go. As the Lord liveth, I will not take from you from a living soul down to a shoe tie or thread, excepting the expense of the food of those who went out with me to battle, as also the portions of the men who went with me, Aner, Ashcol, and Mamre, they and their men, as well as those also who had remained to watch the baggage, they shall take their portion of the spoil. 17 And the kings of Sodom gave Abram according to all that he had said, and they pressed him to take of whatever he chose, but he would not. 18 And he sent away the kings of Sodom and the remainder of their men, and he gave them orders about Lot, and they went to their respective places. 19 And Lot, his brother's son, he also sent away with his property, and he went with them, and Lot returned to his home, to Sodom, and Abram and his people returned to their home to the plains of Mamre, which is in Hebron. 20 At that time the Lord again appeared to Abram in Hebron, and he said to him, Do not fear, thy reward is very great before me, for I will not leave thee, until I shall have multiplied thee, and blessed thee, and made thy seed like the stars in heaven, which cannot be measured nor numbered. 21 And I will give unto thy seed all these lands that thou sayest with thine eyes, to them will I give them for an inheritance forever, only be strong and do not fear, walk before me and be perfect. 22 And in the 78th year of the life of Abram, in that year died Ru, the son of Peleg, and all the days of Ru were 239 years, and he died.
经文里提到，神第3次重复应许，按照亚萨尔书没提到。亚萨尔书提到是在大战后，而下一次经文是立约。经文强调与神关系，亚萨尔书是补充细节。下回书第8部分，我们谈神与亚伯兰立约，亚伯兰犯亚当一样的错， 只是这次没有触犯诫命，上帝最终冷藏了他13年。亚伯拉罕也明白了自己的错，最终才成功的献以撒。旷野立约住四方，宇宙因此的满足。撒来心极力下甲，听妻闯祸的教训。谢谢大家收听以诺谈天节目，希望大家顺着次序听，我们下回见。
The scriptures mention that God repeated the promise for the third time, which is not mentioned in the book of Jasher. The book of Jasher mentions that the blessing was after the war, and then the covenant. The scriptures emphasize the relationship with God, and the book of Jasher is supplementary detail. In the 8th part of the next book, we will talk about God's covenant with Abram. Abram made the same mistake as Adam, but this time he didn't break the commandment. God finally kept him in cold storage for 13 years, then God offered Isaac to Abram's family. The covenant made in wilderness will bless the four corners, and the universe is full of blessings. Sarai was anxious to get a son through Hagar, and Abram listened to his wife, entered troubles, and learned his lesson. Thank you for listening to the Enoch Talk Show. I hope you will listen to it in order, and see you next time.